Yeah, and we'll make that 2 o'clock, so we're good to start if you want to let whoever in.
Okay, thanks very much, convener. So, welcome to the Scrutiny and Audit Committee. Just to advise everyone that this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be placed on the council website for public viewing. I would now take a roll call of the members for the minute, and I would ask members to confirm they're present when I call their name. Bailey Keenan.
Present. Hearing me okay, no?
I can hear you, Kevin. I can't hear anyone else.
I think
Apologies, my microphone was on mute there. Yeah, so
Okay.
Bailey Wright has got apologies, and Councillor McCurvin is attending as her substitute. Is Councillor McCurvin present?
Present.
Okay, thank you.
You're muted again, Willie.
And I don't know why that was. It wasn't on mute. Okay, thanks very much. Bailey McPherson.
Present.
Okay, Councillor Black.
I'm here.
Thank you. Billy Dawson.
I'm here.
Councillor Hunter.
Afternoon, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Short.
Afternoon, I'm here.
And finally, Billy Scott.
Here.
Okay, that takes you on to declaration of interest. As we're not any members of any declarations to the content of the and apologies, I've been put on mute again. Thanks, sorry about that. Any declaration of interest?
Doesn't look to be any.
Okay, thank you. There being no declarations, then it takes you on to item 2, inspection of Blumby Primary School and the Early Years Centre. So, report by the Executive Director, Children and Family Centre Service, and the head teacher, Paula Chagall, is here present for any questions that the committee may have.
Just before I invite Paul to say anything in advance to introduce the item, I would just give members of the committee a wee reminder, because Cathy's asked me to do so, and that's the reminder that the self-assessment training on the 15th of May between 11 and 12 is called on Teams, and I'm asking people to make sure that they're signed up for that. Last year there was only 2 people got the gold star, and that was myself and Fraser. We'd like you all to pick up a gold star this year, so if you could sign up for that training, it'd be really much appreciated. Doing it together will probably help it make it a bit easier, because there'll be someone on hand to kind of explain the terminology that's used in the SIPFA questionnaire. So I'd urge you to do so. We'll have a fun hour, so please book up. Okay, over to Paul then. Get yourself signed up, Lynn. So I'll hand over to Paul then for the item 2. Paul Fleming.
Thank you very much, conveners. So just a note to committee that for the first time we've included an appendix in both reports to inform committee why the inspection reports to committee may differ in structure and presentation from each other, as the 2 reports here today do. And this is because to reflect, if you like, the introduction of the new National Early Learning and Childcare Inspection Framework, which is now a shared framework under which inspections may be carried out by HMIEs, so His Majesty's Inspectors of Education alone, or the Care Inspector alone, or indeed jointly, depending on which inspection model they apply. And as a result, the quality indicators that are evaluated and the format of the inspection reports can vary. And indeed they do, as we have here today. These differences, the reports say, do not reflect differences in the level of scrutiny or indeed assurance, and the inspection reports are reported full here for transparency and accuracy. So in relation to this report, it covers His Majesty's Inspector of Education inspection carried out in January 26, with the report published in March. The primary school was inspected under how good is our school for, and the early learning centre, our early centre rather, was inspected separately under the new ELC quality improvement framework, both using the full inspection models, because indeed there's different models as well. And just in terms of the strengths, inspectors identified many strengths, including relationships, leadership, and a strong focus on well-being and inclusion across both parts of that service. In the primary school, quality indicators were evaluated as good, with well-being, equality and inclusion evaluated as very good. and the Area Centre evaluations were good to very good, with learning, teaching, assessment and well-being evaluated as very good. HMI confirmed confidence in the capacity to improve, with no further inspection visits planned and progress monitored through normal arrangements by our service. So hopefully that's enough just now, and here for any questions. Convener, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I'll just go right on to questions then. Billy McPherson.
Thanks indeed. And I should first of all say I think this is a very good report indeed. Well, very good is exactly what the inspectors have said, really, isn't it? And so congratulations and many thanks to Paula and our colleagues. I think that is testimony to a good job being well done at Belumby. My question, and I don't know if Paul or Paula will wish to answer it, one thing on page 13 really jumped out at me, and that was the second bullet point under school priorities, which read, review of whole school curriculum to ensure it is broad, relevant and enables all children to build skills and knowledge consistently across all areas of learning. Now, it struck me, given the quality of the report, that the curriculum delivery was clearly in line with expectation, and I'm just really wondering why the inspectors should seek to ensure there is a review of the whole school curriculum, given that there is clearly little that is wrong, if you like, and an awful lot that is right at Belumby Primary School.
Taking that one, Paul.
Thanks, Billy McPherson. I'll just start off and then indeed ask the head teacher, Paula, to come in with the detail in terms of our conversations. But it's just to say it will in part be related to the curriculum improvement cycle, where nationally we are going through a review of the whole curriculum in both across the whole sectors, if you like, across Dundee 3 to 18. But in terms of the school and how that applies to the school and what they saw at that time, which is the pertinent point, I'll let Paula come in with the high level detail of that. Billy McPherson, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
sorry.
So on you go.
We had established through our own self-evaluation the need for a review of our curriculum, and it was something we had said to the inspectors. I think they had confidence that they knew our direction of travel. And again, as Paul said, a review of the curriculum nationally was why we were looking at this, but we will be looking at interdisciplinary topics and themes just to make sure there's a relevance to Dundee, develop skills of world of work, and develop the children's knowledge across all learning. So although it was still very good. Sorry, the phone keeps ringing in the nursery. Although the work was good, we still know that there's things we can do.
Yeah, I'm grateful for both replies. Obviously, I think this is a really good report indeed, Paula, and we're very impressed with it. So grateful for your reply.
Thank you.
Okay, Billy Scott.
There was a couple of initiatives mentioned in the report that I found interesting. I just was looking for a wee bit more information about them, please, about how they work in practice. And it's on page 11, and it talks about the learning culture has been supported by the Belumby Consistencies and Relationship Policy, and that's reduced a number of disruptive incidents. I just wondered if you could tell us a bit more about that policy, please, and how it works.
Yeah, when I first started at the school 5 years ago, we felt that the most important thing was the relationships with children and families. So we developed a relationships policy, especially with the children. It did take us a while to do that, but one of the most important things was the Belumby consistencies, and they all run through respect. So it's very clear across the school, and there are posters through the school of what respect means to everyone and what this looks like and what it should feel like and sound like across the school, and that's definitely made an impact to the behaviours within the school and the calm learning environment.
Okay, thank you. And the other one I want to ask about is in the same page where it talks about teachers provide clear explanations using open-ended questions. It says that this practice should now be shared. I just wondered if that's a strength that's unique to Belumby, and if sharing means across your own school community or it means across the whole school's network.
It's probably across the whole school network, but it was definitely seen as a strength within Belumby as well, which was great for it to have been seen.
And is that something that the Directorate will take forward then, that strength that we need to benchmark against Bolumby for?
Well, it's okay to come in, convener. Thank you. So you look in there, absolutely, Bailey Scott. One of the things we do after every inspection is have a look for all of the strengths and indeed the next steps and pair schools up if they're not already matched in terms of school improvement partnership, where we have strengths or indeed learning from things that need to be developed. Head teachers all get the opportunity to speak at our Head Teacher Learning Together days, and we share that learning across the whole service as part of our Every Dundee Learner Matters improvement approach.
Thank you.
But thought you were going to get a closed question to an open answer there, Derek. Councillor Hunter.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just really have a comment to make. I think this is an excellent report. I think it reflects well on Paula and all the staff in the school, all the good work that's going on there. So I just want to take the opportunity to congratulate them. I think we've said this on a number of occasions previously, but when you have areas for improvement for a school, and it's always about should continue to or build on, I think that shows what great work goes on in the school, and I think it's a real credit, as I said, to Paula and to all our staff in the school, and also to the young people who obviously do a lot of great work in the school as well. So certainly be grateful if Paula could take that back to the school, that the appreciation of, I think, of all the members of the committee over the great work that goes on, and this is an excellent report that you should all be proud of. Thank you.
Yep. I've seen any further questions. I'd just make the similar comments. It's an excellent report. Please pass that on to the staff. I realise it doesn't happen easy, and it's a lot of hard work to get there, so it's very much appreciated, and I'm sure you'll make a difference to children's lives going forward, which is really what we're all about, trying to improve citizens' lives in Dundee. So thank you very much for that. With that, we'll, if this report's agreed, it looks like it is, so we'll move forward to the next item.
Okay, thanks very much, convener. Takes you on to item 3, inspection of Craigie Barnes Primary School and Nursery class, and the head teacher Karen Clark is also on the call for any questions this item's for noting.
Yeah. Paul, you want to say any words on this to start with?
Thank you, convener. So this report covers the inspection carried out at Craigie Barnes Primary School and Nursery class in November 2025, with a report published in February of this year. The primary school was inspected by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Education, and different from the previous one, the nursery class was inspected jointly by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Education and the Care Inspectorate under the new Shared Early Learning and Childcare Framework. Inspectors identified, again, a number of strengths, including leadership, positive relationships and partnership working across the school and indeed the nursery class. In the primary school, leadership, wellbeing and attainment, if you like, those 3 KPIs were evaluated as good, with learning and teaching assessment, which can be about what happens on the day or in the week, evaluated as satisfactory. Although you will note, I'm sure, in the areas for improvement, they start with should continue to, should further develop, and should continue to, and indeed in areas that the school had identified as well, which was at least a positive school knowing themselves. In the nursery class, all quality indicators were judged as good, including that QI of teaching and children's progress, learning, teaching, and children's progress. Inspectors confirmed, like the previous report, confidence in the school's capacity to improve, and therefore no further inspection activities planned, and the school and nursery class will be quality assured to our services normal quality assurance procedures. So hopefully that's enough detail for now, convener. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just move right on to questions and Billy McPherson.
Thanks indeed, convener, and thanks, Paul, for the introduction. Again, a very satisfactory report, and congratulations to Karen and our staff for what is quite clearly a good report. My question's really about, given all the positives, and they are positives in the report, I was a bit surprised to read the bullet point. It's at the bottom of page 31, the second last bullet point. I'll just read it. It says, teachers should ensure that all children are actively engaged in purposeful learning throughout the school day. Too often children experience periods of time where there is a lack of clear educational focus. Now, I was a little bit surprised to read that, given, frankly, the remainder of the report. And I was wondering if Karen could give an indication as to what the inspectors were alluding to and how that is being tackled.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, we were also surprised about that, and I think, as Paul alluded to, it was what they saw in those days when they were in the school. It's certainly not something we see in our regular learning walks, professional support visits, and on when our school improvement partnerships visit. I think some of it was we did have some supply teachers in on those days, but also staff perhaps playing it a little bit safer than would be their normal, and were quite nervous on those days. But we have been back in very quickly after the inspection, following the feedback, have carried out professional support visits, have had conversations with staff, and we're definitely not seeing that dead time again. We did talk about this with the inspectors at the time, but they could only report on what they saw on those 2.5 days when they were in those rooms. But as you say, the rest of the report is very positive. We're very pleased with it. So that is something we're immediately looking at. All of the staff have also been out and visited other schools since the inspection, just to clarity and give consistency across the school around all of our learning and teaching approaches. We had a new policy in place. It was very new. We are now, that is quite embedded within the school, and we really feel learning and teaching has moved forward in quite a short space of time following the feedback from the inspectors.
Thanks very much for that. That's very reassuring. And I think what you touched on there, it's a slightly unusual environment, shall we say, when you've got inspectors going through the school.
Yeah,
and I can understand the effect on staff. But what you've given us is a great deal of reassurance, Karen, and I'm grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Billy Scott.
A couple of questions, please, convener. The first one is in relation to something that's written on page 33, which reads that a few children, parents and staff feel that current approaches...
You're on mute, Derek.
So sorry. It was just to ask about a comment that was made on page 33 in the report, and it reads, a few children, parents and staff feel that current approaches to address unkind and bullying behaviours could be improved further. I just wondered what was behind the motivation of these few individuals to make a comment like that.
Yeah, Karen?
Yeah, we hadn't had any direct conversations with parents about that. We have, however, launched a kindness campaign since that, since those comments were mentioned. It wasn't. We have school values, which we'll read throughout the report. The children know, the parents know, the families know. They sit at the heart of all we do. And you'll also read in the report how well the behaviour is of the children, how positive they are, how well they get on. The inspector spoke about that throughout. We have our Silver Rights Respect in Schools Award. We're working towards our gold, which we have a visit at the end of next year. And then we've launched our kindness campaign, which the families have loved. We have our kindness boards, we have our kindness jar. We have children visiting us 20 times a day to tell us how kind they've been. So we have actually had there's been nothing else direct. As I say, nothing came to us directly before the inspection, and we've had nothing. And I'm sure if you visited the school, the children would talk to you about how kind they all are to one another.
Thank you, that's very reassuring. And the other thing I want to ask about was on page 31. I like reading about bespoke initiatives that schools are carrying out. And I want to just ask you about the JOTA standards policy that's helping children organise and present their learning better. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely. That's just really alongside our school values and encouraging the children to believe in themselves and to do the best they can and to present their work well. And we just have a consistent approach across all our schools so that there's a progression from the early years right into second level, where children are strengthening the standards they have of their work and really taking pride in their work. So they are, and we have parents in twice a year so the children can share that and talk about their learning, and they are then feeling much prouder of what they're presenting.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Hunter.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Fleming, but before I do that, a quick comment, which is, I think this is a really good report. I think, again, when we talk about and Mr. Fleming talked about this at the start when he introduced this, when you talk about continue to, etc., that shows there's a lot of good work going on in the school. and the inspectors see that. So I think, again, credit to Karen and all her staff and the young people, and again, hopefully that can be passed back, and much we appreciate what you've done. I suppose my question for Mr. Fleming is a follow-up to Billy McPherson's question, where we talked about what the inspectors saw on the day, and there was also issues there. I think Karen talked about supply teachers. So I suppose the question I have for Mr. Fleming is, what support does the centre give to schools when inspections are coming out, to make sure that support is given to help support them through an inspection, and maybe to help to eliminate some of the things that happened with this inspection, so that a better reflection and a true reflection of the school can be shown?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Hunter. Yeah, there's quite a lot in there. What I would say, first of all, is that when we had the national thematic inspection carried out by His Majesty's Inspector of Education, when they visited Dundee, one of the things we were very clear about and praised was our concordance in terms of our self-evaluation with their outcomes, particularly in early years and primary. So what we self-evaluate is what usually comes out. And so we have consistently concurred with the school self-evaluation of good. Ordinarily, I would say that our inspector colleagues don't just judge everything of what they see. They look at all of the evidence and make a judgment. It was a new managing inspector, and I did speak to him about that and about some comments in relation to the questions asked. However, in relation to carrying out improvements, we do learn and do take all of these points. I think both Karen and Paula and Karen's last points showed you very clearly how she looked at all of those development opportunities and put in place practice. That's consistent across the service. So we do have to think about, when we do have short-term supply in, who maybe aren't even there when the inspection letter comes in the first place, how do we support those colleagues more widely and offer other professional learning opportunities? So something that me and my team spoke about already in advance of this meeting. What I would say is that when we get used to be a box, people talked about the box arriving, when we get the letter, or the email, sorry, arriving, as one school did get on Monday, the very first day back after the holidays, immediately we put in place a support package from that very moment, from the head teacher right through in terms of the pedagogy and what happens in the playroom, in the nursery, or indeed in the classroom. And those who've just recently experienced inspections, for example, yesterday we had the Children and Families Learning Together Day, and I saw both Karen and Paula at different points in meetings with that head teacher. We also have a team of associate assessors. At the moment, they're just primary and secondary, and those associate assessors go out on inspections with HMI, taking part in live inspections. When they come back, we share some of the learnings, so we're getting an ongoing understanding of what folks are looking out for. We want our schools to, as you say, to get an accurate, report. So it's not about playing a game, but we want to make sure that people understand the process, so that we can actually then just see our learning and teaching. Human behaviour comes into it, and I think, as Billy McPherson alluded to, unless sometimes you experience that from inspectors or strangers coming in, sometimes you need that experience. So we're trying to do everything we can to mitigate for that, so that, as you suggest, that we could get an accurate reflection. I think to give that reassurance, as a teacher will have done, what we see in these classrooms is of a good quality. But we will learn from all the points and continue to improve at the school level, but indeed share that learning, which is really important across all schools. I know that Paula had a similar situation in terms of the ongoing supply issues in her school. Because of the bigger school, it doesn't quite have the same effect, but when you've got a smaller school, that can be the case. So hopefully that answers your big question, Councillor Hunter.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Councillor Black, noticed your hand up for a time. Are you still looking to come in?
No, Billy Scott asked both the questions I was going to ask. I did have another one, but then I decided I'd maybe just ask that separately. So no, I don't need to come in.
Okay. I see no further questions then, so obviously I'm hoping that this report's agreed. And if I could just make a comment myself, I think it's an excellent report. And, through the answers that you've given as a head teacher, obviously the school's in safe hands. There's no been something that you've been asked to do that you've no shied away from. Indeed, you've obviously went for initiatives to see improvements within your school, just through the addressing the words that are put in the report. So I think that's a real credit. So if you could pass on the appreciation of the committee to your staff, that'd be much appreciated. So with this report agreed, we'll move on to the next item then, Blake.
Okay, thanks very much, Convener. Takes you on to audit report items. And item 4, there's internal audit reports. It's for noting, and Cathy Wiley's here to speak to the item.
Yeah. Cathy, I'll give you an opportunity to plug that meeting you asked me to address it. Hopefully I sold it well enough for you.
I think you did a very good job. Thank you very much. The only thing I would add to that is that we've booked a room, one of the committee rooms. So if you want to come in person to that meeting, we can have it in person. If you just tell us when you've replied whether you're coming in person or not, so that we can get organised for that, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
You want to say anything on this report then, Cathy?
So there's one report coming up today, which is immigration sponsorship and visas. It's substantial assurance, and really the conclusion is that we've got good sound framework for managing visa sponsorship and international recruitment with clear policies, defined roles and responsibilities, and that really the only item that we've identified that's of any great significance, not great significance, but some significance, is that there are some gaps in the documentation, and that's being worked on at the moment to make sure that that's all being retained, so that we've got that if we are asked to provide that in future for any Home Office investigations or requests.
Yeah. Okay, see, Billy McPherson.
Thanks, Convener. I agree with Cathy. It's a generally pretty positive report. My question, and it may not be so much for Cathy, but more for other areas of management, as it were. I'm very conscious of the fact this is I feel like a pan-council issue as opposed to one department, because obviously there could be staff across the council in relation to the hiring of particular staff. My question's really around the areas for improvement that are listed, 5 of which are on page 53. And in particular, it indicates, the lack of an established communication process, basically, I suppose, to ensure consistency and knowledge right across the council. And I was just really wondering if one of the officers can give an assurance that these areas for improvement have been acted upon.
Okay, Greg.
Convener, if I can just bring in Lindsay McInnes, Convener, to respond to Bailey McPherson's question, if agreeable.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Convener, and thanks, Bailey McPherson. So, yeah, I can absolutely give the assurance that I can give you the assurance on all 5 of those actions if you would like, but certainly in terms of the communication aspect, that communication has already gone out to managers, and we're going to keep that on a rolling programme. So we'll keep that under review to make sure that we are updating, and that we'll actually use a variety of communication streams to make sure that that lands.
That's greatly appreciated. Not that I think, given the remainder of the report, and not that I had any massive worries given the audit, but that is reassuring, Lindsay, and I'm grateful to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Billy Scott.
I had a similar question, Convener. It was just to ask that I'll be satisfied now that all our hiring managers are aware that there are significant penalties for not adhering to Home Office regulations in respect of this issue. And on the back of that, also to ask whether the council has ever fallen foul of Home Office regulations in respect of this and has faced a penalty previously.
Not sure that someone would have an answer to that, but it's maybe something that Leo could look into and come back to you if the Chief Exec was in agreement.
Thanks, Convener. We can look into that and come back to all members of scrutiny.
Thank you.
I have one question myself. Derek, you happy enough with that, by the way? We'll get back to you.
That's right. I suspect it will be no, because I would have thought that if we've ever had a penalty from the Home Office for not adhering to regulations, that we would have known about that. But yeah, if you can check, that would be fine. Thank you. Okay.
The other question that I've got, and perhaps it's another one that we wouldn't have an answer here today, is what sort of numbers of employees we're looking at. I know that a few years ago, perhaps about 10 years ago, the Home Office was the issue in how late they were in issuing visas for people to work, and that was going to have a particularly ill effect on education, because we might not have had the subject teacher to deal with in some of our schools. So if somebody's got the answer, good and well. If not, could we come back on that one as well?
So, convener, if agreeable, if I can pass to Lindsay, I do think officers have a response to your specific question today.
Yeah, Lindsay.
Thanks, convener. Yes, we've got at the moment, we are sponsoring 24 employees within the organisation. And in terms of our checks, we confirmed a total of 56 right to work statuses across the workforce. So they're not sponsored, but they do hold valid visas. So we are completely compliant from that perspective, and I'm not conscious of any particular delays affecting us at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Is this report agreed? Okay, then let's move on again, Willie.
Okay, thanks, convener. Takes you on to item 5, internal audit plan update and progress report. Rescue the recommendations again. Cathy Wiley's here to speak to that item.
Yeah.
Thank you. This report has the progress with the current plan and the items that were brought forward in June last year, plus the position with the outstanding open actions, and it also is asking for approval of the items that we're planning to carry forward into next year or to take out of the plan. What I've done this year is we've had a situation for the last few years where we've had a backlog that we've been trying to catch up, and because we've had vacancies in the team for one reason and another at odd points throughout that period, we've never managed to catch this up. So rather than carry forward a large number of items again in June this year, which will just add on to another full year's plan, we've taken some items out of this so that we can make next year's plan a more manageable number. And I'm hoping that that will mean that when we get to June next year, we'll be carrying forward what would be a normal amount of items, which would be maybe 2 or 3 audits. I can list those if you want, but it does record in the table which ones we're proposing to take out.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm on to questions then. Billy McPherson.
Thanks, convener. I think I've said to you before, Cathy, I think taking items ought to get back on an even keel, frankly, just plain common sense, you know, so supportive of that. My question's really around its information on pages 72 and 73, and it's outstanding actions, open actions, as of the 31st of March 2026. And what jumped out at me is that some of these are really, really old. There's a self-directed support one from 2015-16 with one, I should say the C, H, M and L at the top of the table. It doesn't actually explain what they are, but I'm going to guess that they're critical, high, medium and low. And on that basis, assuming I'm right, there's one high action that would be deemed to be of importance, if you like, going back to quite frankly a very long time ago. And in fact there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think it is, that I consider to be particularly old, going back as far as 2015-16 but up to 21-22. And I was just really wondering if these have been checked of late. I appreciate the passage of time may mean that some of them are not really relevant anymore, but I think really having these as open actions that have never been closed over such an extended period, it would be useful to have that tidied up.
I think it's fair to say that we've been working on trying to get that done, and I know that there are people who are on the call just now who will be able to answer specifics around some of these individual ones that you're asking about. But if I could just say that you'll see from the tables that are at the end of the report that we'll have 107 open actions, which is quite an unmanageable number when we're trying to chase these up. And my team are engaged with people on an ongoing basis trying to move them forward to get these closed off. It's been discussed at some length at the Risk and Assurance Board recently and also at CLT, and we've got some pretty active action going on at the moment to try and make sure that some of these older ones are being closed off so that when we get to June we're in a better position. And also it means that going forward the whole number of outstanding actions will become a bit more manageable. But I know that there are probably people who will be able to answer specifics for you.
Well, thanks, Cathy. Rather than put people on the spot, could I maybe just ask as an action that there on page 72 there are 3 at the bottom of the page, and on page 73 there are 3, and I'm excluding the one on payroll because it's of low priority. But there are 3 on page 73 at the top of the page, if you like, down to fire risk assessments. Could in due course, once there's been an opportunity to take them up with the departments concerned, that the committee is just updated as to what's actually happening here, just to give us the reassurance that these are being tidied up, because I do appreciate passage of time, they might not be relevant anymore, but I think we would really want that reassurance that nothing that frankly, well, these were deemed to be high priority at some point, so it would be useful to have an assurance that they've just, it's not just a failure to act on them, as it were, Cathy. But as I say, just in due course, that would be helpful rather than putting people on the spot this afternoon.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's right. It's a sort of sensible approach to the committee having an understanding of how these are closed off as well. So I'm in favour of that. Bailey Scott. You're on mute, Derek.
I'm sorry, but my fingers just don't work fast enough to press all the buttons I need to press. Sorry about that. I had a similar thought as Bailey McPherson did, that it just seems to be ridiculous that we have an outstanding action that's 10 years old. Why are we even carrying that forward? I mean, if it was urgent and it was something that was essential to the good management of the department, it would surely have been attended to by now. And I don't think we can keep getting reports coming back, having to chase departments asking why these actions aren't being cleared. And as well as the ones that Bailey McPherson's mentioned, I would draw attention to the one for Leisure and Culture Dundee, where there are, that was 2 years ago that the report came to, was reported to the Scrutiny Committee, and there are still 2 critical actions outstanding on that one as well. I mean, so perhaps we could get an update on that too.
Okay, look, the Chief Executive's looking to come in, give a response.
Thanks, Convener. So just in relation to the points made by Bailey McPherson and Bailey Scott, I'm happy to provide scrutiny members with the information and assurance that you're seeking. There has been progress made on the 2015-16 outstanding action that Bailey McPherson raised, and also the 2 critical actions that relate to Leisure and Culture Dundee are associated with the wider review, where we reported an external commission on LECD, and that's been worked through a working group that I am leading on. So at the time the actions were agreed, we weren't clear on the external work and the sense of the review, Bailey Scott, that was needed. Council leadership team have paid particular attention to this last week, and please be assured that our attention will be to review all of those actions, provide that assurance to scrutiny, and then when the report comes back at the next cycle, we will be looking to have a much more reduced outstanding action. And if there are still ones that are out of date, then we will ensure that appropriate narrative and justification as such is provided. So hopefully the convener provides some assurance to Scrutiny and Audit Committee, the members, on the work and action that the leadership team and heads of service are taking.
Okay. That seems to be the line of questioning finished. So is this report agreed? Okay, thank you. We'll move on then, Willie.
Okay, thanks. Takes you on to item 6, the 26-27 internal audit plan. This is for approval, and again, Cathy Weil will be speaking to that item.
Thank you. So this is the plan for 26-27. As we've just discussed, there are a number of items that have been brought forward from the previous plan to be included in here to make the workload more manageable. There's also some information in this year's plan that you won't have seen previously on pages 85 and 86 in terms of the total number of days and how that's divided up amongst the different types of work that we'll be undertaking within the audit team. And that's really just to give you a bit more information about how our resources are being applied, and to some extent that helps to be compliant with some of the requirements of the new internal audit standards that mean that this information should be shared with the committee in a bit more detail than it previously has been. The plan's been put together in the same way as it has in previous years. We've consulted with stakeholders, including members of the committee who've wanted to engage with us. We've also considered the wider context that the council is working within. We've looked at the risk registers, both strategic and the operational ones within services, and just considered all the information from previous audits and also some of the work that's been undertaken by the counter fraud team, and that has all informed where we've landed in terms of the items that we've included in the plan for this year. The plan was discussed at CLT in March, I think. Time seems to be flying by so fast, but I'm pretty sure it was in March. So that's how we've arrived at the plan that we've got here. So hopefully you're content with that. But obviously I could try and answer any questions you have, or we can discuss any changes that you think that you would want to make to the plan.
I think that's, is it Billy Scott's got a question? So Derek, you're on mute still.
I know I'm on mute. Sorry, but papers were on top of my mouth, and I do so, but I'm sorted now. I wanted to ask about the reserve list, and in particular the hybrid working policy, because I note on a later agenda item we have the best value thematic review, and one of the recommendations in there is to ensure the new asset management database system can store and report information on the occupancy of buildings to help inform the council's decision on property rationalisation and use the information in future property plans. So would it not be better that these two things are dovetailed, that we do the audit on hybrid working policy to see how it fits in with that recommendation on value?
So that the hybrid working policy audit is in the reserve list as something that we might have looked at. Obviously the thematic report has just been published. If we were going to bring one of the items that's in the reserve list into the main plan during the year, we would be taking cognizance of anything that has changed since the point where we put the plan together, and that has happened since. I think there would need to be a bit more discussion around what that would be. I suspect that the audit would not be needed at this stage if there's work that's ongoing to implement what's in the best value report, and that an audit maybe in a couple of years' time would be more useful to make sure that that has actually been implemented and doing the things that we expected it to. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but I wondered maybe we could get the chief executive, because I know what they're trying to maximise the council's income and receipts from capital receipts from sales of buildings that are no longer required. An important part of that is the occupancy of the buildings, and hybrid working, which is an element of council working life now. We don't need as many buildings, but surely we need to know that hybrid policy is working, and how many bodies you may have in buildings on a particular day are important in deciding whether or not we need those buildings.
Yep. Are you able to give a response?
Yeah, thanks, convener. So Bailey Scott, the information regarding the hybrid working policy is such that as a minimum, staff are required to work in the office 2 days per week. And there is some data that has been gathered previously around building usage. There's a number of projects that are underway with city development that's looking at the overall property rationalisation strategy. And I know that Mr. Presswood's on the call if committee would like information about that. And part of that is exactly looking at the occupancy, the way in which we're using the building, and any opportunity to co-locate with other public sector partners, or indeed generate income, which we have done certainly within one of our city centre properties. So we do have information. And just following on from what Cathy said, convener, the council leadership team reviewed the paper in advance of it coming to scrutiny and audit. And the view of the leadership team, along with myself, is that we keep that on the reserve list at the moment. However, there are a number of other internal audits that have a higher level of risk, or we feel a greater appreciation of the assurance level from internal audit that we would put ahead of the hybrid working. But I will keep it under review, and we can consider that, convener, at an appropriate stage with the Scrutiny and Audit Committee. But I don't know, convener, if there's anything else Mr. Presswood would want to add, given it's himself that's leading that work on the property rationalisation strategy as part of the transformation project.
Okay, perhaps I could hear from Mr. Presswood.
Yeah, thank you very much, Convener. The Transformation Board is considering a property rationalisation strategy, and it will be on the agenda for the next meeting. We have had a workshop involving all services represented to try and get their input and their thoughts as to what the opportunities may be. That doesn't mean that we are ceasing to move forward on obvious property rationalisation and saving opportunities as they arise. I think members are aware that we have had 2 tenants in Dundee House for a period of time, and we continue to promote 2 floors of Dundee House because we don't require the full capacity at the present time. So as and when we can secure additional tenants, they will be brought in prior to the strategy concluding. We are also exploring surplus capacity within the health and social care offices at Claverhouse as well, because we've been advised by them that they don't really require the whole building either. And again, there is an opportunity there that we're pursuing. So there have been some successes to drive down cost. One of the challenges for us is that even as we reduce the number of buildings that we occupy, and as we develop the strategy, we do find that more modern buildings in particular cost significantly more than traditional buildings to occupy. So reducing the number of properties is one of the few ways that we can actually drive down overall costs, but costs will continue to grow depending on the type of building. Hope that's helpful. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, with that response, Billy Scott.
Yeah, no, all 3 answers have been very helpful, and I'm satisfied with the position. Thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions on this report. Can it be agreed? Okay, thank you. William.
Okay, thanks, Convener. Taoiseach, on to item 7, Audit Scotland Annual Audit Plans 25-26. This is for noting as report by Paul Thompson.
Okay, Paul, were you wanting to say anything, or is Audit Scotland coming in to wrestle with me on the amount of money they're charging me?
Thank you very much, Convener. I possibly couldn't comment on that, but yes, Rachel Brown is here and be happy to speak to the comment and to the report rather.
Okay, yeah, the comment be useful. Rachel.
Thanks very much, Convener. And I'm Rachel Brown. I am currently your appointed external auditor, although I'm here today to inform the committee that that's about to change. There have been some staffing changes, quite a few staffing changes at senior level in Audit Scotland due to retirements. So I will be moving on from the Dundee City Council audit, and Pauline Gillan, who is another audit director in Audit Scotland, will be taking over this audit and the IJB audit, and her senior manager will be taking on the joint board audits. So I'll have handover discussions with Pauline now that Easter holidays are over, and we'll have introductory meetings set up with council officers and Bailey Keenan. If you'd find that useful, I can set that up with you as well. And just to say, Pauline Gillan is also the external auditor of Angus Council, so she has some Tayside background already. So she'll then be doing Dundee City Council and Angus Council together, as well as other local government audits further afield. So firstly, to confirm a paragraph 2, which is on page, I'm going to say 100 of your papers, that I and the team, and indeed Pauline Gillan in due course, are confirmed as fully independent of the council. That's really important confirmation to the committee for your external auditor's role, coming in to provide independent assurance on your use of public money. And we also confirm that we can comply with the required ethical standards at paragraph 3 there. The scope of our external audit is set out, summarised at paragraph 5 of the plan. So that just shows you that it's not just the audit of your annual accounts. We are required by the Code of Audit Practice to undertake what we call wider scope work, which looks at financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, and your use of resources to improve outcomes for the people of Dundee. And we provide some other certification on grant claims, specific grant claims. So that gives you a summary there, and I'll touch on some of those wider areas in a couple of minutes. The plan also sets out the respective responsibilities of me and my team and the council for financial accounts and the audit of those financial accounts for this year. And I will also draw your attention to paragraph 9, which is around communication of fraud or suspected fraud. We do assess the risk of fraud in the council as part of our planning and risk assessment work. So if members of the committee have any concerns about instances of fraud or suspected fraud that have not already been brought to my attention, or if you have any concerns about officers keeping you updated about counter fraud activity, then do feel free to take this opportunity to share that with me. And you'll be asked for that assurance again at the conclusion of the audit before the audit report is signed. So I will pause very briefly, just in case any hands go up to indicate matters that need to be raised with me. I'm hoping that'll be a nil response.
Looks like a no response.
Nil responses.
No. Councillor Dawson.
No, it's just to say hi again to Rachel, and she will no doubt remember that I have no qualms in saying who audits the auditor, Kevin. So I kind of agree with you on audit costs and stuff along those lines, which I think they're extortionate. But I'll not go back down that line just now, Rachel. You're safe at the moment, because you will remember our time on ESEC where that was a heated question.
Absolutely, Bailey Dawson, and I'll cover the audit fees later, and also encourage the council to respond to forthcoming consultation on the fees and funding strategy for the next audit appointment and the next Code of Audit Practice. So if I move on to page 103 of the plan, which focuses on the annual accounts audit, which is the bulk of our audit work, but not the full extent of it, I'm required to draw to your attention materiality levels. So just to confirm to you, for the council single entity accounts and the group accounts within your annual accounts, we set a slightly different materiality rate. That's the level at which, if I found a misstatement of that magnitude, I would require it to be adjusted, or I would have to amend my audit opinion. So that's the kind of the level at which I would consider a user of the accounts to have their decision making influenced by a misstatement of that level. And the performance materiality level there is a trigger point, which is a percentage of the overall materiality level. So if I found a misstatement of that level, I would require to consider further audit work as a result. And the last level in that materiality table is the reporting threshold, so that more minor errors are not needed to be reported to the committee, so you don't have a hugely long report consisting of little tiny errors. So that's set based on my judgment within a range set by Audit Scotland of £500,000. So if something below that I thought was worth raising for your attention, I would report it, but at the moment the intention is to not raise individual misstatements below that level in the annual audit report. I'm also going to draw to your attention paragraph 15, where we say we have a forthcoming meeting with the local area network of local government scrutiny bodies. It was just to let the committee know we have held that meeting, and there are no additional audit risks or additional scrutiny activity coming out of that discussion. It's an opportunity for local government scrutiny bodies to come together and discuss the council and the IJB and come to a view on do we all have a shared view of the council and its processes and its performance. And I will supply the Chief Executive with a summary of that meeting fairly shortly. So just to let you know, we've had the discussion. It's a good opportunity for us to share intelligence. It's not a formal shared risk assessment. It's about sharing information and a shared understanding, because we each scrutinise or audit the council from a slightly different perspective. So that's happened, and as I say, the Chief Exec will get a summary of that shortly. The next point I'm going to draw to your attention is Exhibit 2. I'm required to flag the significant risks of material misstatement in the financial statements. So this is what we've identified as areas requiring specific audit work in your annual accounts. And the first one is fraud caused by management override of controls. That's not in any way specific to Dundee City Council. Auditing standards require that to be considered as a significant risk of material misstatement, just because of the nature of management's position in any organisation. So that sets out our planned audit response. That's our standard audit response to that risk. There's nothing else that we've found in Dundee City Council that would require further work on that. But just to say that's not flagging a specific risk around fraud at Dundee. That's a standard significant audit risk for every single audit, and you'll see it in every single audit plan with a planned audit response. The other significant risk is similar to prior years. It's around estimation and the valuation of property, plant and equipment, so your non-current assets, because there are assumptions made in the valuation of those assets, and changes in those assumptions can result in material changes in the value of those assets. And I draw to your attention that in the 25-26 annual accounts, for the first time, indexation is to be applied by local government bodies in valuing these assets, not council housing, but other non-current assets, property, plant, equipment assets. So we are in discussion with officers about the approach to that. All council auditors are in discussion with their councils about the approach to that. So we're just flagging that as one, the valuation is usually, and you'll have seen it in prior year plans, an area of risk for us. And I'm just flagging that indexation is new, so all councils are getting to grips with that. Other sectors have been allowed to use indexation previously, local government has not. So officers are aware of that, that change, and are engaging with the valuer and with us on that change. So I do flag a less significant risk of material misstatement, again related to estimation, which is around the estimation of pension liabilities, or indeed pension assets as they've been in recent years. And that's because there's complex actuarial assumptions made in that valuation. So we assess the reasonableness of those assumptions, and Audit Scotland engages its own auditor's expert. I am not an actuary. We engage with an actuary to get a reasonableness check of the assumptions made by local government pension scheme actuaries. So those are the risks of material, the most significant risks of material misstatement that I've identified. So they're the areas where there's additional work over and above standard audit work for the annual accounts. We also summarise the group audit approach. Dundee City Council, along with other councils, has that requirement to produce a group so that you reflect the full scope of your council activities in your annual accounts. So Exhibit 3 on page 108 sets out the different approaches. Most of those arm's length bodies are audited by Audit Scotland, but one of them is not. So there's no additional work or significant risks that we need to carry out additional work on. I have no concerns about getting the assurance we need across all the different elements of the group there for Dundee City Council's group accounts. So I'll just move on to the wider scope audit, and I set out on page 109 what those wider scope areas are, and confirm that while we will carry out audit work across all those 4 areas, there are no significant risks for Dundee City Council coming out of our planning and risk assessment work. I mean, I don't underestimate the financial challenges that the council faces in line with other public bodies, but there's nothing in the operation of the council that has flagged a specific risk requiring further work by us in that area. The best value audit section on page 110 just summarises best value related audit work. You've obviously got the thematic review and asset management later on this agenda, and you've already had the Controller of Audit's report on best value. That was in year 1 of this audit appointment round. We will be looking at your compliance with the new Statutory Performance Information Direction this year, and we'll look at your, as we do each year, your performance reporting and public performance reporting. And we didn't identify any significant best value risks from planning and risk assessment work. So the areas flagged above will be the standard best value audit work at Dundee City Council for this year. Moving on to the reporting timetable and the fee, confirm in Exhibit 4 on page 113 that we will be concluding the audit by the end of September deadline for local government audits. So that's a good achievement, because not all council audits are being delivered by the 30th of September, but that's the timetable we're working to. So the next audit output that you'll see is the annual audit report at the 23rd of September meeting. The audit fee is set out at paragraph 39. It's £472,500. That reflects the local government sector increase of 4.3% from last year, and in the 24-25 audit we charged a £2,500 additional fee for additional work on non-current assets, which is why that increase between the two is not 4.3%. So in setting the fee, say we assume that the council has effective governance arrangements and that accounts will be provided in line with the audit timetable. We've not had any concerns in those regards from Dundee City Council, so don't anticipate any additional complications from that. And the last point in the annual audit plan was to confirm that we engage with internal audit, and just to say we're not planning to place formal reliance on internal audit's work to reduce our own testing, but we do take account of everything that internal audit reports to inform our financial statements and wider scope work. And I should also say, not placing formal reliance on internal audit is not a reflection on the quality of internal audit's work. It's about the nature of their risk-based audit and our risk-based audit and the financial statements work that we're required to do to support the audit opinion. And I also summarise at the end of the annual audit plan the audit quality arrangements that Audit Scotland has in place to ensure that audit services provided are of a high quality, and that we seek feedback from audited bodies, usually annually, but if there's any feedback in between times that you would care to share, we're always happy to hear feedback either directly to me or Pauline Gillen or supplied to the Audit Quality and Appointments team. And I was going to pause there for any questions on the council plan before I moved on to the charitable trusts plan.
Any questions for Rachel on the council plan? No. Looks like we can move on to the charitable plan then. Rachel.
Thanks, convener. I should just scroll through my papers. We bring a separate annual audit plan on the audit of the charitable trusts annual accounts, and similar to me saying there's a change in the engagement lead for the council, there will be a change in the engagement lead for the charitable trusts. Because we are recruiting for a senior audit manager for the Dundee City Council audit and associated audits. But Fiona Owens will remain, contactable and the go-to contact for the charitable trusts audit and indeed Dundee City Council audit until that new senior audit manager is recruited. So these are, I like the comment from Bailey Dawson, thank you. So again, we confirm the independence of Fiona Owens and the audit team from the charitable trusts and compliance with ethical standards. And again, the scope of the audit is set out paragraph 5. Because these are charitable trust audits, they are audited under a different requirements and different scope. So that sets out the confirmation of the charities regulations that we abide by in those audits. And Exhibit 1 sets out the separate charitable trusts that are covered by the 3 sets of accounts there. I should say that the reason these charitable trusts are currently audited by Audit Scotland is because as the councillors are sole trustees of these trusts, so they are required under Section 106 of the 1973 Local Government Scotland Act to be audited within the public sector audit regime. And I'll just put in a strong suggestion to the council and trustees that if you appoint an independent trustee who is not a councillor and not a council officer, then that takes it out with Section 106 of the 1973 Act, and you may choose to appoint a different auditor. At the moment, you don't get to choose to appoint the auditor. It's Audit Scotland under Section 106. But we are strongly encouraging charitable trusts, particularly small charitable trusts that would sit below the audit threshold, to consider appointing an independent trustee. But moving on from that, officers and trustees may discuss that with the auditor going forward. The responsibilities of the trustees is set out here. The trustees of those trusts ask that the Scrutiny and Audit Committee consider audit reports related to the trusts. So that's why I'm bringing these to you today. Again, we set out materiality levels for the different trusts at Exhibit 2 on page 126. So that's essentially a percentage of the net assets for those for those audits, because quite often the net assets in the statement of financial position is so much higher than the income and expenditure for charitable trusts. Again, we are required to bring significant risks and material misstatement in the financial statements to your attention, and that's Exhibit 3 on page 127, which is, again, the presumed significant risk of management override of controls to perpetrate fraud. And again, that's a standard response to that risk. I'll move on to the audit outputs timetable, fee and quality section for the charitable trusts. Again, the timetable is set that we will bring the audited accounts and the annual audit report for the trusts to the 23rd of September committee meeting. The audit fee is set out at paragraph 26, that's £8,450, which is that sector 4.3% increase on last year. And again, we summarise audit quality arrangements within Audit Scotland to ensure that your auditors providing quality services, and again states that we're happy to receive feedback at any time. So that's a bit of a canter through the Charitable Trust's annual audit plan, and I'm very happy to take questions on behalf of Fiona Owens, who is unfortunately not able to be here today. Thank you.
Yes, any questions for Rachel on that report? Doesn't look like it. Can I maybe ask one of Paul, if we're going to have assets indexed, how would that affect in any way our accounts going forward? What we're likely to see in future? And how would it compare if we have a piece of land that's on the books at 100,000 this year? Is it going to be slightly worth a bit more next year? And we're going to see the sort of value of land going up, because I've seen it frozen for an awfully long time.
So thanks for the question, convener. So as per the accounting policy within an account, there's a requirement to revalue assets periodically and within a 5-year period. In terms of the indices, we will have to engage with our colleagues in city development. We have a chartered professional in terms of an assessor who is a registered valuer, and we will take advice from our valuer in terms of the appropriate indices to apply. Once those valuations are applied to accounts, then the appropriate disclosures and any movements within the values and impacts on the accounts will be reflected in the accounts in due course. So happy that answers the question, but happy to, hopefully that answers the question, but happy to provide any further information on that.
Okay. I know it's Mr. Press who's looking to come in as well.
Thanks, convener. Just say I had a briefing on this morning, and it is an area of concern for the asset management function, the property function within city development. It is a significant challenge at the moment to recruit staff who have appropriate skills and qualifications to carry out this function. And indexation, although it sounds simple, annually requires a significant amount of additional time, because although the indexation may sound simple, always upwards, it actually could be reduced. And what we're finding at the moment is a lot of the property within the council area is actually reducing in value instead of increasing in value, and therefore that will have consequences for the council's own assets as well. So we are currently working on options for that, but it will be a challenge to respond to this new legislation.
Yeah, thanks for that. I don't see any other questions. Can we make a comment? Can I ask that maybe officers consider the comment that was made in relation to the audit of the charity by introducing a few potential independents and to see whether there is a cost benefit to us in doing so. I realise, of course, in saying that it was a few years ago very difficult to get an auditor to take on people's books, given that at the time the fraud that was reported for the SNP, or 600,000 going missing, they couldn't get an auditor to take their books on. So I realise there'd be some difficulty there. So, but it'd be worth investigating. Councillor Black, you're looking to come in? You're on mute, Jim. Still on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, apologies. I had to move because the sun was blinding me at my desk, and so that's why I kind of disappeared for a while. Just a point of information: the funds of the charities, are these actual funds, or is it the value of property? And are these funds, is that pounds and pence sitting in an account somewhere? The 6.5 million it adds up to.
I think somebody will have to give you that answer. I think that the estate, there's an estate at Belmont that lands in it that is probably just if we could sell it. So, and it's been up for sale for a long time. Paul.
Thank you, Convener. So I can confirm, Councillor Black, that the various trust funds are backed up by a range of different assets, including property, investments, cash and other debtors, etc. But happy to provide a copy of the latest accounts for you that has that information, if that would be helpful.
I think, yeah, if we are going to think about appointing independent people to those trusts, it would be quite useful for us to have a much better understanding of them than we have, well, than I have at the moment. I shouldn't speak for other councillors, but I suspect they're a bit obscure to most of us. I've been in Belmont Castle. It's amazing. It looks like a great big money pit. So I would imagine that £2.5 million wouldn't even scratch the sides of sorting that place out. But that's probably a discussion for another day.
Well, we want to come back on that?
Just to say, Councillor Black, I'd be happy to arrange a briefing on those accounts, including the details within, if members would find that helpful.
I would certainly like that to happen.
Yeah. Billy McPherson.
Thanks, Convener. I would only make the comment in relation to appointing independent persons over and above current members, is that the rationale for doing so should not be the audit fee or who the auditor is. It has to be what added value these individuals bring. And but I've absolutely no doubt that officers would bear that in mind before proceeding in such a manner.
Happy for them to look over. I only asked or suggested that to look at it. I think when we're looking at cuts where it takes meals off the tables that were on there for elderly people, makes you think a bit different about how you could save a few bob and leave that meal on the table. So we've had difficult. Some of the things that have happened this year have been a bit difficult, and the health and social care partnerships had severe cuts there as well, which none of them I see as particularly pleasant cuts. Oh, well, that's how I'm having a go at your fee, by the way, Rachel, but I see you're going to give an opportunity to come back on that at some time, so and no doubt officers will take that up as to shape up the next move. Is this report agreed? Okay, thanks for that, and Rachel, I wish you well moving on.
Thanks, Convener.
Cheers. Willie.
Okay, thanks, Convener. Takes on to item 8, arrangements for external quality assurance of internal audit. We've asked you the proposals in this report by Paul Thompson, and he may introduce other people to speak to this item.
Paul, yeah.
Thank you, Convener. Nothing to add other than what's in the report and the recommendation, which is to continue to use the reciprocal arrangement in terms of other internal audit services, providing that evaluation on behalf of Dundee City Council, but happy to take any questions that members have.
Is this report agreed? Okay, it's agreed. So move on then, Willie.
Okay, thanks, Convener. The remaining item 9, Audit Scotland Best Value Thematic Review 25-26. This is for noting, and I believe that Andrea Calder may be speaking to this item.
Andrea.
Thanks, Convener. I'm Jennifer Grant from Audit Scotland. As it's Audit Scotland's report, would want to do an introduction, and then we're happy to take any questions.
Okay then, Jennifer.
Thank you, convener. I'm Jennifer and I've been on the Best Value Audit team for the last couple of years for Dundee City Council. You'll be glad to hear that this is the final of the 3 reports presented by Audit Scotland today, and this is the Best Value thematic report on asset management. This year was year 4 of the Best Value approach. Previous themes have been on transformation, workforce innovation and leadership, and you've received those reports in previous years. Next year's theme has not yet been approved, but it's looking like it will be information and data, but you will hear more on the actual scope once it's been formally approved. The audit question this year was how well councils are managing assets to achieve its corporate objectives and respond to challenges around financial sustainability and climate change. And the work this year was split into 3 main sections, which were asset management planning, governance and performance, and partnership working and community engagement, which also included looking at community asset transfers. The key findings are set out at the start of our report, and this is a generally positive report. The council has an up-to-date corporate asset management plan that aligns to corporate objectives. We've made 3 recommendations in the improvement action plan as part of this report, which is in the appendix, which is page 162 in your papers today. And these relate firstly to ensuring that the new asset management database that is being sourced can store and report information on the occupancy of buildings to support decision making going forward. Secondly, to review and agree a set of key performance indicators to monitor the implementation of corporate asset management plans and just reporting on this regularly to improve the oversight of the plan. And finally, there's a minor recommendation about community asset transfers and publishing decision notices for all community asset transfers on the website, alongside some support and information to back up how the decisions have been made. The council have accepted all the recommendations and provided management responses and timescales for each of the actions. Finally, I would just like to say thank you to everyone who was involved in supporting the audit work this year. The audit work consisted of 2 interviews with officers. So we've met with Robin, Paul, Neil and Greg as part of that work, and also been supported through by Andrea. So thank you very much for that. And finally, I'm happy to take any questions that you have on the report.
Okay, thank you for that. First question's in from Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, convener. My question is with regards to council assets and asset transfers, and whether there is a weighting put towards social capital. Having come from a surveying background, I could say that a building is worth X amount because that's what you would get if you were to take it to the open market. But within the environment of public sector, social capital has a massive influence. So it was just to find out that discussion you said was with people who are very much looking at the value of a building, but where does the social capital come into it, please?
Jennifer, are you able to respond to that, or do we need an officer?
Probably best to pass on to someone like Robin for that.
Okay, Robin, are you up for that? Go on mute, Robin. Still not hearing you.
Apologies, I think you can hear me now, convener, but I'm having technical problems at my end. Yes, we do certainly take that into consideration, and I think it's fair to say that the types of assets that we do get approached largely for community asset transfers do tend to be local. They don't tend to have a high commercial value. We'll obviously reflect on whether there could be a high commercial value, but typically it's former sports pavilions, former community centres, that type of thing. And it does mean that the negotiations with the prospective community partners are comparatively easy. I think the key challenge for us is ensuring that they have viable propositions, because I think the worst thing is transferring an asset to an organisation and subsequently discovering that they simply don't have a viable business model, and then it sits in someone else's ownership. It becomes a derelict blight on the community. So yes, we do take that into account very strongly, and we are keen as you know from the previous discussion, to drive the property rationalisation, and that includes a large number of these estates. So we've had, I think, 2 on committee on Monday night. So we are, I think, very proactive, taking on board community asset transfer, and specifically the social capital that you asked about, Councillor Short.
Okay, Billy McPherson.
Thanks, Convener. Jennifer alluded to the area that I had a question about, and it's the information on page 160 regarding community asset transfers and the concern raised about decision notices not being published online and the assessment process not appearing. Now, Jennifer said that there's been agreement between council officers and Audit Scotland in that respect. I appreciate the number of these is low, but I think getting a general principle as to what's published and when and so on is important. I was just really wondering if Jennifer can confirm. You said there's a timescale now for that being sorted, as it were. I was wondering if you could perhaps expand on that.
Yeah, of course. The timescale and also just the management response for that has been set out on page 164 in the appendix, which sets out that by October 1st of October 2026, the council intend to complete that action.
Yeah, and are you confident that it's not so much a question for you, Jennifer, possibly more a question for Andrea? I take it you're quite confident that can be done, Andrea.
Yeah, we've had discussions with neighbourhood services on that, and that's doable. We don't have a lot of formal community asset transfers, so we had one that was published but taken off because it had been over 3 years and we hadn't had any more. So we're going to have all of them on, but we're also going to put our voluntary information on as well, so that there was a fuller picture, because we have a lot of other processes where they're not as formal as community asset transfer, so it's to make a bit more information available, and that 1st of October was an agreement with neighbourhood services and realistic.
That's very helpful, and I think adding in the voluntary, if you like, non-statutory ones, I think it's really helpful from the point of view of transparency, so grateful to you for doing that. Thank you.
I suppose I thought the report was very useful because it links a few things together in property that we didn't normally see together. The report obviously mentions that we're going to spend 74 million on net zero, which is great, and also mentions that we're 1.4 million behind with repairs or backlogging in repairs, and we've got a rack situation to look forward to in our properties. And, you know, I suppose there's another aspect to the city that's got a rack issue. But it concerns me that we're going to invest very heavily in retrofitting stuff, but we might not be retrofitting it to a building that's meeting the best possible standard. And of course, if we're delaying on repairs in any building, then we've depreciated some of the value of that, you would have thought. So what's the juggling act there, or what's the juggling act recommendation for officers? I mean, it was something that Councillor Black raised the other day in relation to parks, saying, you know, great, we're going to invest $1.5 million, but what we're doing to maintain the asset that was there anyway. So where are we on that? Greg?
Convener, I'll maybe start off. So in relation to the specific point about investing in assets and the revenue costs, you'll be aware that when officers bring forward committee reports about capital improvements or new capital assets, included in that is the revenue costs associated with maintaining. That's what will happen in the example that you've raised there that Councillor Black highlighted on Monday night. So officers are calling out, as part of that decision-making process for officers, the revenue costs associated with reactive and planned maintenance, so that it aids the decision-making when council are looking to do any further development. I guess in relation to the wider point, we've got an agreed capital plan that's been approved by committee. That's what officers are working to. And if any new priorities come along that require substitution, then officers will look at the benefits of doing so and make recommendations and discuss that with committee. So it's a challenging time. However, we will look to invest in the assets that have the greatest lifespan and the greatest benefit to citizens. And I'm happy to pick it up separately with officers, given it'll cover both property, corporate services and neighbourhood services.
Okay, I mean, obviously there was 2 reports up on Monday night as well in relation to district heating and net zero, and unless there's a load of money comes into the city, none of them are going to happen. So again, obviously looking for a huge investment to go into assets that might not be kept the 100% that it should be. So I think it's a juggling act, and it would be useful to keep something like that on an agenda. Okay, is this report agreed? Okay, then that's, I believe, the whole business completed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye now.